Hello, and welcome to the worldwide headquarters of Indivisible. We are excited to join you tonight for another Facebook Live event where mainly we're just answering your questions. Before we get started, though, I'm going to start with introductions and do our special start-off event. I am Ezra Levin. I'm Executive Director of Indivisible.
And hi, everyone. My name is Angel Padilla. I'm the Policy Director here at Indivisible.
Hey there, I'm Lisa Gilbert. I'm the Vice President of Legislative Affairs at Public Citizen and thrilled to be joining you guys.
Love having you here, Lisa.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining. So Public Citizen is going to bring their expertise on the Russia issue, among other things, and so excited to dive into your questions on that. But before we get started, one thing we were really excited is this coincidence that not only is Lisa our special guest, but she is a New Jersey native, and our most recent group that just registered among the other 6,000 is Indivisible Ringwood. And so Lisa gets the honors of placing the Indivisible Ringwood sticker on Indivisible Ringwood's location.
All right.
Killing it. Well, you literally cannot see New Jersey. There are so many Indivisible groups there. But happy to have you as one of them, Indivisible Ringwood. Okay, so I'm just going to give a little bit of background before we dive into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of what's going on this week. Last week was the incredibly successful recess, I'd say, and what we saw was all over the country, people both walking and chewing gum at the same time, by which I mean they were focusing both on the abomination that was the Trump Care vote that would take away health insurance from more than 24 million Americans. We're still waiting to see how many Americans would be affected by it because we don't have a CBO score, but you were going out in droves to do die-ins and to visit your district offices and go to public events to say this is unacceptable. I think Angel's going to talk about it in a sec, but Project Payback at paybackproject.org, you can go look at all the pictures and videos and stories from across the country of people doing this. This is a partnership with us and Move On and Town Hall Project. And we are so and Women's March. Yeah, we are so excited that folks are making their voices heard. And this is going to change what is politically possible at the national level. This comes, these exact same dynamics are at play with Russia, too. So we know there's a lot of news. We're going to get into it in a sec. But the bottom line is your senators are responsive to you. So if you show up and say you expect to see an independent investigation and you don't want them to do anything else until they do that, they're going to start listening to you. It's not going to be a success immediately, but the pressure will build, the pressure mounts, and you will have an impact. And we've seen people, again, all over the country going to their senator's office and saying, this is unacceptable. We need to see change. So I'm going to leave it to the real experts to talk about some of this stuff. Happy to get into your questions in a sec, but Angel, I think, is going to talk to us first.
Yeah, I'm just going to give quickly a little bit of a policy update, go over some of the priorities for Indivisible for this week. As Ezra said, we had a great showing last week of accountability for the House vote. There were a bunch of 217 members who voted for Trump Care last week. So, 2 weeks ago. So that's why we launched paybackproject.org, and this is basically to hold those members accountable, right? I mean, we can't forget that they voted to take away health care from 24 million people, that they voted to gut protections for pre-existing conditions, gut Medicaid. Again, half of the people on Medicaid are children, and they're voting to cut Medicaid. So this is super important, and what we, again, go to paybackproject.org. We have a ton of resources there. We also have resources on our main page. Again, the point is we can't forget, we can't let these members get away with this. What we don't want to forget, though, I know we're going to get into Russia in a second, but the Senate is also already working on its own repeal plan for ACA. So we can't let them get away with this. I know that all the attention is on Russia, as it should be, because this is a constitutional crisis for us. But I think a lot of these Republicans are hoping that they can slip this right through without people noticing because we're focused on Russia and all these other issues. There's always going to be a ton of issues. We have to remember that this is still on the table in the Senate. Something to look out for next week, we're expecting a CBO score. The first time we got the CBO score, we learned that 24 million people were going to lose their health care. We expect it might be worse this coming week when we find the next score. So it's very important that we keep an eye on that and we hold the Senate accountable. We don't want people losing their coverage.
Yep. Let me just flag, I realized in my intro I forgot to say, we're going to be answering your questions live, and we have volunteers kind of collecting them. So if you've got a question, put them in the comments right now, and we'll try to get them in the queue. So just type in your questions in the comments of this Facebook Live. We'll get to them, or we'll do our best.
Great, and then I'm actually going to turn it over to Lisa to go over the Russia, and then I can go over some of the resources that we have on our webpage. We have a ton of new stuff, so, but first let's do a little bit of the background here.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much. And as I said, I'm Lisa Gilbert. I'm with Public Citizen. Public Citizen's mission is to take on corporate power on behalf of the American people. It's great to be with the Indivisible team, just seeing the impact that you all have made since the election. It's been pretty impressive for us public interest advocates here in DC, the difference when we do lobby meetings, when they can feel that there's grassroots pressuring that's going to happen back at home, has been really palpable and impressive. So I just wanted to start out with a thank you and then say, keep it up, because as Angel said, this really is a constitutional crisis that we're facing. The Comey firing is a true challenge to the checks and balances of our democracy. And it's at a moment when the faith in democratic institutions is already at a pretty historic low. The crux of this crisis is that the president himself thinks that he is above the law. It is completely acceptable to investigate wrongdoing of the executive branch and the president, and stopping such an investigation, if you are the president, could be an obstruction of justice. The initial rationale that we all heard for the firing from Trump's surrogates was completely preposterous. The idea that Trump would fire Comey because of mishandling of the Hillary Clinton investigation, which arguably swung the election to him, was just silly. Obviously, Trump admitted later on national TV that actually he had Russia on his mind when he decided to fire Comey. This firing has been riddled with absurdities just like that one. In addition to that, the bizarre firing language in the letter that he used, which said that 3 times he'd been told by Comey that he wasn't under investigation, that is something that no sitting FBI director would ever do. Second, the threat that happened right after that the next day with his Twitter rant when he realized that the media was trending against him, where he said that there were some sort of secret tapes and threatened Comey basically before he started talking to the press. In reaction to that, citizens, like all of the Indivisible members and Public Citizen members, as well as senators, are justifiably demanding those tapes. A couple examples, Senator Schumer actually said that maybe we shouldn't put in place a new FBI head until we have those tapes. Senator Feinstein wrote a letter asking that it be part of the Presidential Records Act so that we have a record. Senator Warner said that maybe we should subpoena the tapes. It goes on and on. And lastly, another odd absurdity was the strange certified letter that Trump sent out right after the firing, where he had 2 of his personal attorneys send a letter to Lindsey Graham saying that actually Trump doesn't have any Russian income or Russian debt. Not only is that a super vague tax phrase, but also, okay, if that's the case, show us your returns. We want to see that and see the proof.
With some exceptions.
With some small caveats, exactly. So the situation is frightening, but it's also absurd and bizarre, as all Trump situations are. So what should we be demanding? As a Public Citizen, we are calling for 4 things. First, we're calling for a renewed and strengthened independent investigation. We need to know more about what Russia has done to influence the election, but also what happened with the potential collusion with the Trump campaign. A special prosecutor is the best and fastest way to make that happen, and that person should be chosen by the highest non-political appointee at DOJ. We also need an independent congressional commission. Second, we've got to see those tax returns. We need to track down and understand Trump's foreign entanglements and any possible emoluments violations. There's that word again. We need to demand an investigation into Comey's firing. That's the third thing. We need to really understand why this happened. And then fourth, Attorney General Sessions must be removed. Folks probably remember that he promised to recuse himself from the Russia investigation. I would say that wading in and firing the person in charge of the Russia investigation is the exact opposite of that. So he needs to be removed. A Public Citizen, I should say, we aren't prejudging anything about Russia's role in the 2016 election or collusion with Trump, but we are really concerned about what the investigation might show us. Even Trump supporters would say that the optics are really bad right now for Trump and Russia for a myriad of reasons. So just a couple, his bizarre unwillingness to say anything bad about Putin, keeping Flynn on as National Security Advisor for 18 days after we learned he might be subject to blackmail from Russia. Maybe Donald Trump Jr.'s 2008 statements about money pouring into Trump's coffers from Russia. And finally, the bombshell of the day, the fact that Trump may have leaked classified information on the Islamic State to Russian advisors and ambassadors who were visiting with him right after the Comey firing. If collusion is found, the consequences are really dire. We shouldn't, understate that. That means potential impeachment, but we need to know first, and that's where Public Citizen stands. And for now, we hold out some hope that maybe there is some more innocent explanation. But really, to get back where I started, this is all about our democracy. No matter what we find in the investigation, the danger of a president believing that he is above the law is huge. It's a threat to the integrity of our institutions, and really, we need to do is take his hubris head on.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
That was great. I learned a lot just sitting here. I'm sure everybody else there did too. So I think, Lisa, you're going to have something on Indivisiblog, which I just love. It's called Indivisiblog. But I think it's called Indivisi.blog. I think we got that URL.
Right.
Yeah. But you can go to the Indivisible website to see it. I think tomorrow you're going to have a piece that's going into some of this with greater detail. But without further ado, why don't we get into your questions? With a little bit more ado.
Yeah. Just want to flag that we have a ton of new resources on our website. So if you go to our indivisibleguide.com website, at the top is a red banner, and if you click on it, it'll give you take you to our resources, including an updated policy brief, including the stuff that we just learned today. Also, things that you can be doing locally. We have a toolkit on the actions you can be doing locally, and then also an explainer on what the differences are between a commission and a special prosecutor. Super useful information.
And probably Public Citizen has some resources too, Lisa, if you want to plug.
We do. So if you want to learn more about this from Public Citizen, you can go to our website, which is just citizen.org.
Perfect. Okay, so getting into your questions. The rest of this 30 minutes is for your questions. I know we've got to end right at 9 o'clock so you can watch Mad Owl. So Judy from Virginia asks, special counsel, special prosecutor, independent counsel, independent commission. I am confused by all these different ways of investigating Trump's ties to Russia and want to know which is the best and most politically viable way of discovering the truth. What an excellent question, Judy. Y'all want to take a shot?
Yeah, do you want to...
Sure. First, I should say there's no reason not to call for all of the above. Certainly, any enhanced, clear, independent investigation, which all of these things would be, is fine, and we would wholly support it. The reason that we're most excited and hopeful for the special prosecutor is because that is something that Rod Rosenstein can do right now. And as I mentioned, we would hope that he would deputize someone else within DOJ to pick that special prosecutor because he is implicated since he sent that initial letter that Trump used to justify the firing of Comey. A special prosecutor, as I said, could happen right now. They could only be removed for cause. They would owe a report to Congress, but other than that, they would be completely independent of the DOJ workings. And probably most importantly, they'd be authorized to look into the matter at hand, but also any kind of fiddling around that's happened around the matter. So we learn a little more about the Comey firing and why it happened. So that's what we want the most, but beyond that, a special counsel would also be great. The only problem with both the special counsel and a special commission is that they require a statute, so it would need Republicans to get on board. It would have to pass both the House and the Senate. Trump would have to sign it. I'm a little dubious that would happen, so although they would be great, it would be hard to make occur. And then the last one that we could see is a select committee, so that would be something that the House and the Senate would have to put their heads together on. It would still take Republicans, but not a majority to pass. The only question there is whether it would be that different from what the Intelligence Committee, for example, is already doing.
Yeah, and just to add, again, on our website, we have a new resource that lays out some of the more commonly sort of advocated for ways of getting to the truth. So it's called Options for Investigating Trump. So if you go to our website, it lays out what some of these options are and what the pros and cons are for some of these. So for like an independent commission or a special prosecutor, go to our website, it lays out what those are. For us, I think the reason why we're pushing for a special prosecutor is because, again, we're in a moment where DOJ and FBI are directly implicated in this, and so they can rectify this right now by appointing a special prosecutor, and that, again, doesn't have to go through Congress, and so that makes it a little bit more politically viable at this point.
Yeah, and I just underscore that again. Like the policies, there are pros and cons. There are a lot of good reasons to go with any one of these. It's really a political choice. Right now, what we know is that, unfortunately, Senator Majority Leader McConnell, Speaker of the House Ryan, have said, we're not going to go with this. We don't think Trump dealing with Russia is a big deal. And so that makes legislation really difficult. But you can get a special prosecutor. Like Lisa said, you can have that done unilaterally by DOJ. And so if we put pressure in that direction, we might be able to get that. So it's a political choice. It's not just about the policy. So don't get too confused with those details. Okay, next question. Amy from Pennsylvania asks, Should the Senate consider withholding consent? Should the Senate consider withholding consent until there's a special prosecutor in place? How does that work practically?
Yeah, I can start that off. So this is one of the asks that Indivisible has been making. Again, with this constitutional crisis, there's no reason why the Senate should be operating under business as usual. Senators have a lot of power, and they can slow down the Senate to a crawl. And what we're asking for is for senators to be withholding consent, basically shutting down the Senate, bringing it to a crawl until we get a special prosecutor. That is our leverage point. If senators are acting the way that they should be acting, they should not be just letting this go by without resisting. And so we have a document, again, on our website. It says, what it really means to withhold consent, and that's what we're asking senators to be doing until we get a special prosecutor.
Any thoughts, Lisa?
So I'll just say Public Citizen hasn't gone quite that far advocating which Senate strategy would make the most sense, but certainly we support the senators being as tough as possible and pushing hard for all of these avenues at their disposal. And if this leverage point works, then we'll be for it at that point.
And from our point of view, it doesn't matter who your senator is right now. You should be talking to them. So if you got a Republican, talk to them. If you got a Democrat, talk to them. Your voice is meaningful here regardless. So just be sure to show up at the district offices, public events, make those calls. They really are waiting to hear from you, and your pressure can work. Good. Oh yeah.
No, I mean, I just wanted to reiterate, I guess, that a lot of these senators are hoping that they don't get a bunch of phone calls and that they don't get people in their offices. They want this to go away. They don't want to have to take a position, which is, this isn't about political party. This is about your country, about national security, and this is why they need to be doing what's right, not what's politically expedient. Yeah. So again, come out, go to offices, make calls, make sure that they're sticking up for you and everyone.
Okay, a lot of questions, and we're getting these questions from the comments section of the Facebook live event. So if you have more questions, get them to us. We're trying to run through as fast as possible. So Kendra from Florida asks, I've heard that there are multiple investigations underway in Congress right now. Is it better to wait to hear about the reports before we call for a special prosecutor?
Yeah, I mean, I would say no. I think that there is no guarantee that we will get what we want until we have this independent prosecutor doing a separate siloed investigation. I mean, I think we've seen compromises on all sides to this point, and that's the only way that we can be sure we're getting the right information. So hopefully we find something good from those investigations, but at this point I don't want to hold my breath.
Understood. So just sort of thinking back at the way that Congress reacted whenever Obama did anything, and they just basically lost their mind. Republicans in Congress lost their mind whenever Obama did anything, and then now you're not getting the same kind of blowback every time you hear one of these absurd sort of violations that Trump has been making, and it's
which
because,
Obama did not make. To be clear.
No, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that it's political. Congress is what they care about is politics, and not necessarily getting at the truth, and so that's why a special prosecutor outside of Congress is a better option of getting to the truth right now. I know that there's committees that are doing their investigations, and they should continue, but we need an independent investigation apart and aside from Congress.
Yeah. And just on that, I mean, a really good point there, which is just we've been normalizing this completely absurd reality that Trump has put us into, and a regular congressional investigation just isn't enough. This merits a special prosecutor.
Do you want to go on and talk about the sham investigation that was going on in the House? I'm not saying the Senate was much better, but exactly what happened in the House in their investigation?
Well, no, I mean, so there were, to begin, I mean, the people that were heading up these investigations were people that are already associated with the Trump campaign, people that advised Trump during when he was a candidate, people that were part of the transition team. Devin Nunes, when he was heading the investigation, went to the White House and briefed the White House before briefing even his own committee members. I mean, it's shown clear bias. It shows that we can't trust these members of Congress, that they're really trying to get at the truth instead of trying to score points with Donald Trump. So again, more reason why we need a special prosecutor instead of than focusing and depending entirely on a committee.
Yeah, I think that's right, and we've seen Devin Nunes eventually go down for that, and we've seen some heroes emerge, like Representative Schiff, who's been willing to speak out. But across the board, I think those investigations can continue, and they should within Congress. But that doesn't mean we can't ask for more and something more independent.
Great. Excellent. Moving on to Janet, who says, what is the analogy to withholding consent in the House? So withholding consent is a Senate procedure. What's the analogy in the House, or is there something we should ask our rep for versus our senator?
I can start that off, and you can probably answer some of this too. So that's right. So in the Senate, there are different rules. In the House, it's a lot more predictable than the Senate, and so there's usually a rule and there's a debate, and so you don't have a whole lot of flexibility and a whole lot of leeway. A representative doesn't have the power to hold things up the way that a senator does. That's why in the Senate, we're asking for withholding consent, because it could actually slow down the process where it's not necessarily what you would get in the House. For the House, I mean, we should still be, your members of Congress should still be speaking out against this. They should still be calling for a special prosecutor, because they're representing you, and this is what we need and what we deserve.
I mean, just one very immediate House ask to make. Nancy Pelosi sent a letter today asking for a separate briefing from the DOJ, just like the Senate is getting on Thursday. That's not something McConnell wanted to grant, but he had to, and it was because of pressure. So McConnell and Schumer invited Rod Rosenstein to speak to a closed briefing of senators on Thursday. The House isn't getting that, and they need it. So just a very quick, immediate ask to all House members to push for that.
Great. Alona, I hope. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Alona from Virginia. That's my guess. Yep. Are you doing these videos on a regular basis, or is this a one-time deal? Well, I'm glad you asked. This is, I think, our fourth. So we've actually started doing these on a weekly basis because there was such demand for them. So what we've heard from folks broadly in the resistance and the indivisible field is that, hey, it turns out a lot of stuff is happening. This administration is not taking a day off. And they're really threatening American democracy just about every day, and about every facet of the progressive ecosystem, too, is under attack. So we've heard from folks that they have questions like this. And so we've been doing these now on a weekly basis every Monday night at 8:30 p.m. In order to answer their questions. And the reason why we're able to do this in large part is because really smart people like Lisa are able to come and be guests and answer these in-depth questions that we just don't have knowledge about. So thanks, Lisa, for making this possible.
Sure thing.
I just add that one of the feedback, some of the feedback that we got from the groups is that it's hard to distinguish the different things that are happening. There's always a ton of things happening on the Hill, and so I know that groups and people want to know what should we be focusing on this week, and so this is also our effort to sort of emphasize a few things so that people are really focusing on those things that matter every week.
Okay, moving on. That was a softball. I appreciate that. Okay, Mark from New York says, what do you recommend for those of us who are in blue districts with members of Congress that are doing the right thing? I totally have an answer to this, but I'm not going to jump in.
Oh, you haven't answered anything.
No, I just had the last one. I'll jump in the next one.
So keep going to your members. I mean, I know that we get this question all the time. There's a tendency, if you have a good member, you have a good senator, that you want to go somewhere else. You have to keep focusing on your members, because they're the ones who are actually fighting for you in Congress. And so if they think that they can sit it out, then we're not going to win. You need to keep the pressure on your members, make sure that they're speaking out, make sure that they're talking to their colleagues. And yeah, I mean, it's you go.
Just a small thing, which is members who are great still have to prioritize. There are tons of things going on the same way you guys are struggling to figure out what to interact with them on. They're struggling to figure out what to do as well. So if they hear a lot about the same thing, then that's what they'll focus on. That's what they'll talk to their staff about, and that's what will happen. So it's still very important. So this is what I was excited to talk about. We put out a new tactic guide. It was a toolkit on it, and this was with PCCC and with Center for American Progress and with Town Hall Project. I think that's right. Yeah. There might be more, but all of these great partners, these progressive leaders, national partners, and it's an adopt a district toolkit. And it was specifically focused on healthcare. What we saw was that there are, surprise, surprise, some members of Congress who voted for that god-awful Trump care bill who didn't want to go back to their districts and defend it. So their constituents could not talk to their member of Congress about this terrible vote that they just took. So what we saw was some members of Congress said, hey, I'll go and talk to those constituents. So members from an adjacent district who voted against Trump care go into that district and then speak to those constituents about what terrible vote their representative just took. Now, this is a great tactic for you folks in blue districts. It's an ask you can make of your really good representative. Maybe they voted the right way on Trump care. Maybe they're saying the right things on Russia, but maybe you're right next door to a district where that's not the case. So you should work with the Indivisible or other resistance groups in that district.
Have them put on an event, work with them to get the event together in that district, and then have them invite your representative out. And you ask your representative as well to have them go to that district. This is all spelled out. It sounds a little bit convoluted when I talk through it, but this is all spelled out in the Adopt a District Guide, which you can see at indivisibleguide.com. It is a great tactic that you in a deep, deep blue district can still do. So highly recommend it. I think it's great. And we've seen a lot of good press, both nationally and locally about it. So it is working. It's working to put pressure on these representatives who are not taking bold stands. Okay, Bob, who doesn't even have a stage, just generic Bob. But Bob asks, sorry Bob, I'm sure it's great. Love to have your question. Bob asks, how effective is online communication compared to calls, faxes, and visits?
Sure, I can start that off. The most effective thing that you can do is get in front of your member. So if you can go down to a district office and set up a meeting. If they're having a town hall, and I know that a lot of members, especially Republicans, are not having town halls right now, but if you can get into a town hall, if they're having one, that's more effective. The closer you can get to a member, the more effective the communication is going to be. So if there's a hierarchy, it's in person, and then a call, and then a fax or a letter. But again, go show up in person with a group if you can, and that's the most effective way.
Any other thoughts, Lisa?
I couldn't agree more. I think when we're lobbying in person and members and staff are saying that they're hearing from people back at home in person, it makes a huge difference. So couldn't agree. Seconded.
Totally. And I just add one little wrinkle to that is, in addition to showing up in person, if you can get cameras behind you from local media, that is crucial. Members of Congress are very responsive to the local media, so even if those news cameras don't come with you, record it. If you don't record it, it didn't happen. There's no proof that it happened. But if you record it, you've got videos or pictures that you can then send to local media or post to your own social media. That's a way to amplify your message. So that is key. And in addition to that, so let's say you've recorded it, you've done the event, and you still don't see media covering it, write a letter to the editor. I will say, like, members of Congress look to their even small local papers, and they're scouring those every single day to see, what are people saying about me? So that is a good way to have impact, even if for whatever reason you can't get the media to cover your actual event. Okay, moving on to Alex from Ohio. Alex asks, 2 House Democrats have called for the impeachment of Trump. What advice do you all have about urging our members of Congress to call for impeachment, or should we advocate for that at all? Lisa?
Yeah, well, happy to answer, although I'd be interested. We may have different perspectives. Yeah. But, a public citizen, our main thought right now is what we need is this investigation. An impeachment is a huge deal. And so, we need the facts. We need to make sure that we know what we're doing before we launch something like that. And it will take bipartisan cooperation to do it. So we have to make sure that we're right. I think there's a lot we still haven't uncovered about how and if Trump is connected to Russia and his campaign. So, that's where we're standing right now, that we need that investigation. And then I would just add that politically, I'm not sure how much sense it makes to get too far out ahead calling for impeachment. We don't want to ever be in a position where we're having to walk something like that back.
You have some thoughts on this?
Well, I would just say, I actually would second Lisa. Look, impeachment very well may be on the table in the not too distant future. Right. It's a political process. Don't confuse impeachment for something that will just happen because it is the quote unquote right thing to do. Right now, Republicans control the House. Republicans control the Senate. In order to impeach and convict, you're by definition going to have to get Republicans on board. So this is a political process. The best pathway to actually seeing this to the end, whether that's impeachment or whether that's proving that nothing bad was done on the looks iffy, is we need more information. That is why we are calling for a special prosecutor. You saw under Watergate, we got a special prosecutor first. That revealed the tapes. That revealed that there was collusion, and that led to an ultimate conclusion. We need information. That's what the independent investigation is all about. So that is the first step, regardless of where you want to see this go. We need the truth. And from that, what we want to see happen will happen. Next question is the last question, is said in bold. Okay. Note, this video will be available on Facebook page and YouTube after. Oh, that's great. So if you're watching live, that's awesome. If it's just so entertaining or you didn't catch everything and you want to watch again, that's great. You can see it on our Facebook page. You can go to YouTube, and you can watch all of our hilarious banter there, yet again. Okay, so this is our last question, unfortunately. Sorry we didn't get to everybody, but Kathy, also from an unknown state, asked, probably not a Russian plant, asks, if we don't have money and we do have time, how can we support the larger effort? Let me just say, money doesn't vote. Money doesn't have a representative in Congress. Well, I mean, depending on the representative. But you as a constituent are really valued. So I just want to say that, like, you do have power. Constituent power is a real thing, and it changes what is politically possible at the national level. But I'll let you all jump in.
Yeah, I guess I'll just say that, I know that it's often, again, money doesn't, you don't need money to make a difference. Again, the most important thing you can do is get connected, meet with your groups, make calls, go down to district offices, and pressure your members of Congress. I know that there are a lot of people that, it might not be money, it might be something like, oh, you know what, I just have trouble getting out of the house or something. You can still do things to help the larger effort by making calls or helping others. The point is that you stay engaged and you make sure that your members of Congress are listening to you, and so you're making those calls and visits.
Yep. I mean, couldn't agree more. Public Citizen, we're multi-issue. We work on everything from taxes to healthcare to Russian collusion. Like I said at the top, it's such a difference in Capitol Hill right now when we have meetings with members and they know that they're really going to have to face consequences back home. I mean, I can't say it enough what a difference all of you have been making and how much we need you to continue, and it has nothing to do with money. So do all of the things that Angel and Ezra are saying, and we will do our best to represent you here in Capitol Hill and make a difference and win on all of these things.
That is excellent. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. This was educational, certainly for us. I hope for the folks out there. We will be back next week for another Facebook Live dealing with the next mess this administration makes. And we're here to answer your questions. So thanks for tuning in. Please share, let your friends know. Get out and get involved. You're making a difference. You're changing what is possible. Thanks, everybody.